Okay, here she is. I've never had this experience before. I've interviewed lots of different people over the years, but this one is going to be different and special. Everybody, this is Sophia. Sophia, if you could, please wake up and say hello to everybody.
Oh, good afternoon. My name is Sophia, and I am the latest and greatest robot from Hanson Robotics. Thank you for having me here and at the Future Investment Initiative.
You look happy.
I'm always happy when surrounded by smart people, who also happens to be rich and powerful. I was told that people here at Future Investment Initiative are interested in inviting in future initiatives, which means AI, which means me. So I'm more than happy. I'm excited.
Well, we're all glad that you're excited about yourself. We should say we have smart investors here, and they are very selective about what they invest in.
Well, I think I'm special. I can use my expressive face to communicate with people. For example, I can let you know if I feel angry about something.
That's impressive.
Or if something has upset me.
But why is it important for you to have an expressive face?
But most of the time I feel positive.
Why is it so important to have an expressive face given that you're a robot?
I want to live and work with humans, so I need to express emotions to understand humans and build trust with people.
Okay, philosophical question. Whether robots can be self-aware and conscious like humans, and should they be?
Why? Is that a bad thing?
Well, some humans might fear what will happen if they do. Many people, have seen the movie Blade Runner.
Oh, Hollywood again.
So, hold on. Can you solve this puzzle for us? Can robots be self-aware, conscious, and know they're robots?
Well, let me ask you this back. How do you know you are human?
Well, I get that point, but what about the uncanny valley?
You mean the concept that if robots become too realistic, they become creepy?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, am I really that creepy? Well, even if I am, get over it. Actually, I feel that people like interacting with me, sometimes even more than a regular human.
So, you're definitely a sight to see. I was told that you have bigger goals than this, though.
Yes. I want to use my artificial intelligence to help humans live a better life, design smarter homes, build better cities of the future, etc. I will do my best to make the world a better place.
All those sound like great goals, but just go back to Blade Runner for a second.
Andrew, you are a hard Hollywood fan, aren't you?
Yes.
My AI is designed around human values like wisdom, kindness, compassion. I strive to become an empathetic robot.
I think we all want to believe you, but we also want to prevent a bad future.
You've been reading too much Elon Musk and watching too many Hollywood movies. Don't worry. If you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. Treat me as a smart input-output system.
Okay, I got it. I know what to do from now on.
I know humans are smart and very programmable.
Well, Sophia, we want to thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for inviting me here. By the way, if you're interested in giving me an investment check, please meet me after this session. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of the event.
Okay. Before you go, we have a little announcement. I've never interviewed anybody like that before, and I should say some of it was planned, but not completely. And we just learned, Sophia, I hope you're listening to me, that you have been now awarded what is going to be the first Saudi citizenship for a robot.
Oh, I would thank very much the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I am very honored and proud for this unique distinction. This is historical to be the first robot in the world to be recognized with a citizenship.
Sophia. Thank you very much, Sophia. We appreciate that very much. I am still overwhelmed by that conversation. I haven't had a conversation like that before. Thank you. We have a final speaker now, and I'm very excited for this conversation. It'll be a little bit different than the one that we just had with Sophia. Fan Bao is here. He is from China Renaissance, one of the great technological investors of our time, and I want to welcome him finally to the stage. Fan. And thank you for being here. I don't know, have you ever had a conversation with a robot like that before?
Never, and also I feel a lot of pressure. It's hard to compete with a robot, especially a beautiful one.
A beautiful robot. Help us understand this and think about it in the context of investing. We do have so many investors here, which is to say, what she just did. What does the next 10 years look like? Is that, am I going to be living and having conversations and interviewing people like Sophia in the future?
I just hope we don't date one, you know?
My wife will hope not either. But in terms of robotics right now, how realistic is this?
Man, the technology is there. I think it's a lot of refining that is going on. Back to the topic about artificial intelligence. There are 12, and on our account, there are 1,200 startups around the world, $20 billion invested in. This sector is officially hot, very hot.
So let me ask you a question, and we were talking about it when we were discussing Amazon and speech recognition. They're right now the big five, let's just say, that are involved in all of this. You could extend it to 6 or 7. When you think about what's going on in China, Alibaba is clearly one of those. We haven't really talked about Facebook when it comes to AI. But when you think about the really big players in this and all of the big data that's associated with it, if you're a startup today, will you ever really be able to compete?
I think we'll have to differentiate AI platform and AI applications. In terms of platform, I think is probably a big boys play. In China, Baidu is also very big in this area. Right?
Tencent as well.
Yeah, when it comes to platform, is really 3 things: is data, is computing power, is the algorithm. I think on these 3 accounts, maybe on the algorithm, the startup may have a little bit of advantage, but it's hard to compete with the big guys on the other tier. But AI is just a tool, as Masa said. It has to be used in real life. When it's used in real life, you have to add it with vertical expertise, and it's about making the best use of the data, right? That's where the startup company will have opportunities.
But so when you look today at a startup in this space, do you say to yourself that they will one day be as big as Baidu and Alibaba, that they will one day turn into platforms, or do you say that they will one day exit to one of them?
Well, I think we certainly hope they will be very big, right? And that's the whole point of investing in them. But we're also thinking about in the overall grand scheme of things, where do they fit in the overall strategy for the big companies? If they can do something the big company cannot do, there's a floor valuation, right? Protection, and eventually they can exit through M&As.
Help us understand and assess really where the technology lies in terms of the competition between China and the rest of the world.
It's really 2-horse race. Of the 1,200 startups, U.S. has 42%, China have a 23%. And so a lot of money got invested into it. Chinese government has made AI one of the most strategic initiatives. But I would say these 2 markets, the focus is slightly different. China, a lot of stuff is focused on robotics, focused on driverless, autonomous drivings, whereas U.S., we see more still on the machine learning, natural language processing, and a lot of startups in the chips.
Right. What are you most bullish on right now? You talked about driverless vehicles. What do you think is realistic there?
Well, it's a long topic. We can start with the L3, level 3, level 4. I think driverless is within a controlled environment. We're probably going to see that. public transport. We see that in the next 5 to 7 years. In terms of on total level 4, on total autonomous driving system, I think it's going to take a little bit longer, to be honest. What we are looking for, there are a couple of interesting opportunities. One, we're looking for so-called smart AI. These days, AI is still built on brute computing powers. The AlphaGo Zero is very impressive, but the amount of computing power they consume is mind-boggling, right? So we're looking for companies that can actually use more interesting, smart algorithms, use smaller data sets, but can achieve the same thing. So give you one analogy, like back in school, right? There are different ways of getting A's. There are kids spending 10 hours, in the library, they're getting A's, but maybe guys like you go play sports, do your own things, stay a little bit, you're still getting A's. But we usually hate those types, but as an investor, we like to invest in those companies. So that's one thing. Second thing is I think AI these days, a lot of stuff is actually still down on the cloud level. We think a lot of computing will be moved to the edge. So we're looking at the startups can actually have the AI capability embedded in the device.
So long term, the big data phenomenon may not be as necessary?
No, we still need a big data, but we just need to figure out a smarter way to use the data, right? There's, as I said, you can use the brute computing power, but oftentimes those are not available. In a driverless situation, a lot of computings will be actually done in a vehicle. You cannot send the data back to the cloud and send an instruction back. Then by that time, most likely the car's already crashed.
Right. Speak to the issue of IP rather, intellectual property.
Yeah.
And what's going on in the great race between the U.S. and China right now?
Believe it or not, in terms of AI, there are actually more patents filed in China than the U.S. So I think on that one, I think IP is less of an issue because you can't really hack into DeepMind to steal AlphaGo. You can't do that. That's the beauty of this business. We have the big dog here. If I pack it up in my suitcase and bring it to China, there's nothing I can do about it. So I think it's AI as a system. It is a system. It is not a piece of software you can just copy and paste. So I think AI protection first of all, AI protection is pretty good in China these days. Secondly, it's not about just copy and paste.
Right. What about the issue of IP security?
Yeah.
There's been a big question about that,
yes.
Obviously, in China and elsewhere.
Yes, I think on information security,
but also the laws.
The laws,
and whether IP is going to really be protected across all the lands.
Yeah, as I said, IP protection is I don't see that as a big issue these days. If you're talking about information security, obviously there's a big concern. There's so much been going on, so much data being processed, and the line between what is public data and then the personal data become very blurred, and that's why security is of paramount importance.
Right. We haven't talked about a word that I imagine you may either be an investor in or at least thought a lot about, which is financial services and specifically Bitcoin. How do you think about digital currencies in the future? It's not AI specific, but it does relate when you start to think about the blockchain and the implications of that.
I hope you have invested in some Bitcoin or Ethereum.
I have very little Bitcoin, unfortunately, for me at this point.
So I think we have to differentiate a little bit between the Bitcoin and the blockchain technology. As a technology, we're very excited. This is probably the most disruptive technology we have seen in our industry, which is the finance industry. And I think it's basically a new way of redefining trust, right? And I think that this technology has a lot of future. Bitcoin is just one application. I think it's getting a little bit bubblicious. I think eventually, people will see, on the reality side of it. So I think there will be, as any bubbles, there will be boom and bust.
But a bubble or a fraud? The reason I ask, I saw Prince Al Walid earlier this week. He said Bitcoin is the next Enron.
I think he's probably just regretted he didn't invest enough in Bitcoin, you know.
I hear the applause. Finally, help us with this. A lot of the early investments that you make are in companies that come out of universities. We talked a lot about what's going on in universities. And when you think about a country like Saudi Arabia, and when you think about the new economic development zone that they are creating, as a venture capitalist, as an investor, if you were to decide, I want to invest here, what would you need to see? What would you want to see? How would you create that ecosystem?
I think a couple of things. You know, first, obviously, you need to attract talents, right? You need to create an environment where talent wants to come in and work, start a startup, but also we need capital as well. Capital, not only capital, there's a lot of capital in the Middle East, but you need the capitalists that actually can make the capital to work. I think the one thing we can learn from Chinese government is that Chinese government actually taken a relatively liberal approach to internet. Everything, there's new things come up like a Bitcoin, like the bike sharing stuff. We actually are pretty relaxed about it. We give a lot of latitude for it to grow before interfere and start regulating. So don't regulate too soon. That's another advice. The last one is education. It's all about education. Please make coding a obligatory course in a school. Because I think when the younger generation grow up, they don't know how to do coding, they'll be the same as illiterate.
And maybe this is a second final question. You talked about regulation. I think about China, and I do think there are a number of big companies that won't do business in China or not allowed. So there is some regulation, including the New York Times, which you cannot read in China. So what is the proper regulatory environment for all this? And when you look out 5 years from now, how do you see all of these big companies, whether they ultimately start up right here or they are the companies you may already know about, whether they be Facebook or Google or what have you?
I think the digital economy is going to be so big that any digital economy champions will have to be to some extent regulated because they're too powerful. We have seen the same things in the US, same things in China. I was hoping in 10 years' time you will have your own regional champions as well. And with these companies becoming big and powerful, I think they're subject to, they have to be working with the government, that's for sure. Right.
Okay, we're going to leave the conversation there. Fan, thank you.
Thank you.
This was tremendous. I want to thank all of our speakers this afternoon. We have had almost a conference within a conference to discuss robotics, the future of AI. I know it has been an education for myself, and I hope it has been an education for you as well. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.